child massacre. Dozens of school children are gunned down by the Taliban in Pakistan. Church meets state. Archbishop Joseph Kurtz meets in private with the president in the Oval Office. Positive renewal. A Vatican report on religious sisters in the U.S. strikes a gentle tone. And elaborate simplicity. It takes several weeks to construct this depiction of the simple birth of Jesus. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, December 16th, 2014. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick, and here is your news now. The Taliban unleashes a bloody attack on a Pakistani school. At least 132 students and 9 staff members die. Many more are wounded. Jason Calvi joins us with the very latest.
Brian, one parent says his son was a dream, and that dream has been killed. The raided school has about 1,000 students from 1st through 10th grades. At least 141 dead and another 124 students and staff injured today. Students ran away once the attack started or did whatever they could to stay safe. He says, "We hid under the desks. They shot dead our teacher and burned her." The military-run school is in Peshawar in the northwestern part of the country. A military spokesman says there were 7 attackers, all wearing explosives. The Pakistani Taliban claimed responsibility, saying they were responding to military action against them. The country's prime minister condemned the terrorism and says they'll continue to go after militants. Former Pakistani parliament member Farah Isfahani explains the Taliban's motives.
Schools of this nature are seen as, again, Western instruments for educating the children in a way that is not according to the Sharia, the warped Sharia that these extremists have in mind.
The same group has carried out numerous attacks, including the shooting of Malala Yousafzai, a supporter of female education.
We should stand up together and fight against terrorism, and we should make sure that every child gets safe and quality education.
U.S. leaders also condemned the Taliban's actions.
At this military school in Pakistan, they sent their kids there with the hope and dreams of serving their country. Instead, today they are gone.
Tonight in Pakistan, a candlelight vigil for the victims.
This is about time that we need the national unity on the subject, and we need to take on Taliban by now, because enough is enough.
The country's prime minister announced 3 days of national mourning. Today's siege is one of the worst in the past decade. In that same city last year, Islamists hit a church, killing more than 85.
Now, some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. President Obama meets today with the president of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops in the Oval Office. It was a closed meeting, but Chief White House correspondent Suzanne LaFranchi has some follow-up for us tonight.
Brian, both the White House and the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops were very tight-lipped about the face-to-face meeting. While the two sides do agree on some issues like immigration reform, they clash when it comes to Obamacare and the HHS mandate requiring the coverage of contraception and abortion-inducing drugs. Donning umbrellas, Archbishop Kurtz and his entourage quickly and quietly exited the White House after an hour-long meeting with President Obama. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops would only confirm that Kurtz requested the meeting, but would not elaborate on specific issues discussed. Last month at the Fall General Assembly of the American Catholic Bishops in Baltimore, Kurtz pushed for immigration reform and continued opposition to parts of Obamacare mandating abortion coverage. He also echoed Pope Francis's call for mercy and outreach.
What is the language we use that can touch the hearts of people? Because sometimes the message remains true, but the language needs to be something that will really touch the hearts and people will understand.
I expect there's a lot of airing of agreement and disagreement.
Theology professor Chad Pecknold says while Kurtz and the president likely discuss poverty and immigration reform, the overarching issue for the church is the HHS mandate and religious liberty.
If the church isn't free to engage in ministries to families of all sorts, then it's really not with the president. It's not with the immigration reform that he wants. So we have to agree for greater religious liberty if we're also going to agree on what's necessary for immigration reform.
Professor Pecknold said other topics of discussion likely include security for the Pope's visit to the United States next fall and criminal justice reform in light of recent racial protests across the country. Brian?
Thanks. Suzanne LaFranchi at the White House tonight. Australians honor 2 heroes killed in yesterday's hostage crisis. Prime Minister Tony Abbott and his wife laid flowers at a memorial near the coffee shop where about 20 people were held captive. One victim, the cafe manager Tori Johnson, reportedly wrestled for the gunman's weapon in the final moments of that siege. The other, Katrina Dawson, a lawyer and mother of 3, may have been trying to block a pregnant friend from gunfire when she died. A memorial mass was celebrated today by the city's Archbishop.
Yet innocent people are threatened the world over, and a little bit of what has been commonplace in the region of Christ's birth has even come to Martin Place.
That was the scene of the Sydney siege. The suspected gunman was a self-styled Muslim cleric. The Prime Minister portrayed him as, quote, a deeply disturbed individual, not acting as a religious fanatic. It's looking more like Jeb Bush will make a run for the White House in 2016. The former Florida governor has been dropping serious hints about a potential run for several days now. In fact, he tweeted today he'll, quote, actively explore the possibility of running for president of the United States, end quote. The brother of President George W. Bush and son of the first President Bush says he'll form a political action committee next month. He is also writing an e-book outlining his philosophy of governance and is releasing thousands of emails from his time as Florida's governor. Well, Bush could face a young protege in a bid for the Oval Office. Florida Senator Marco Rubio may be close to joining the race for the GOP nomination. Rubio and supporters have a retreat planned for next month to discuss his presidential possibilities. He may have to choose between a presidential bid and running for re-election to the Senate in 2016. That's when his term ends. The Pennsylvania manhunt for a suspected killer is over tonight. The body of 34-year-old Bradley Stone has been found in the woods near his suburban Philadelphia home. The Marine veteran is suspected of killing his ex-wife and 5 of his former in-laws. The killing spree may have been motivated by a child custody dispute. The lone survivor of the shooting, 17-year-old Anthony Frick, is recovering in very serious condition tonight. Ireland's voters will soon decide whether or not gay couples can legally marry. The government-backed measure reflects rapid social change in that predominantly Catholic nation. Prime Minister Enda Kenny says told lawmakers the planned marriage equality bill will go to a public referendum in May. Recent Irish opinion polls indicate around 3/4 of Irish voters support legalizing so-called gay marriage. Gentle, encouraging, positive, all describe a report on women religious in the U.S. released today by the Vatican. The Vatican investigation into the work of U.S. sisters that began 5 years ago ends with praise for their dedication and efforts to help the poor despite their dwindling numbers.
Your message to us today shows that you do understand our ongoing struggle, to faithfully serve the Church in challenging times, despite our shortcomings and limitations.
When the investigation began, some U.S. sisters were thought to be too secular, even feminist. But the report released today backed away from that assessment.
And perhaps the way this was set up and gone about in the beginning and kind of the lack of communication caused some tension, some well-grounded and founded tension, and also some fears.
There is an encouraging and realistic tone in the report. Challenges are understood, but it is not a document of blame or of simplistic solutions. One can read the text and feel appreciated and trusted to carry on.
There are about 50,000 women religious in the U.S. today, down from 125,000 in the 60s. Their average age, mid to late 70s. The report stressed appreciation for their work. It asked them to make sure their training programs reflect church teachings and to pray and focus on Christ. Alan Holdren, our Rome correspondent, joining us now. And Alan, this didn't turn out to be the scathing report that some people had predicted. Describe the tone and maybe a few highlights of the report.
Well, we had this press conference today in the Holy See Press Office, and the people presenting it, there were 3 religious superiors in particular, and they were overwhelmingly positive about this report. The report goes into just general reflections on religious life in the U.S. as a result of what they call the apostolic visitation. And it was an investigation into 341 religious institutes for women religious in the United States. So it gave a broad perspective on the state of health of these institutes today, and really a snapshot of where they are after years of challenges in today's society. They said that they're dealing with an aging population of religious sisters. Most of them are in their mid to late 70s, they said, the average age, and they've got half as many as they had in the 1960s. Give them a chance to really explain the reasons behind that. And I think that's the point of this report, really, was to show the state of health of women religious in the United States today.
So why was there so much concern, even some anger over this investigation?
Well, they said during the press conference that it was really just sort of sprung on the women religious in the United States. They didn't expect it. And so when the announcement came that there would be a visitation, no one really knew how to interpret that. But they said that once they opened their doors, they found that the people doing the visitation, these other religious sisters from the United States, they found that it led them to introspection as to who they were and what they're doing, what their future is. And so the initial anger turned into hope on the part of many. For others, that anger still hasn't dissipated. And today, one of the sisters said that that's not a healthy way to be.
Well, this does not affect the Leadership Conference of Women Religious, or LCWR, investigation that's been going on 5 years. What happens now after this report's been released?
Well, they said today that the different religious communities will take the results of the investigation of this visitation into consideration for their futures. Where the visitation process found that there were real problems, and they did find real problems, they said they will be sending personalized letters to these different institutes, to the Mother Superior, and they will let them know where they found the problems and offer them proposals for how to remedy those problems. So there is a real personal touch, and that's why this was so successful, and that's why the tone of this press conference today was overwhelmingly positive.
All right, Alan Holdren reporting from Rome tonight. Thank you, Alan.
You're welcome, Brian.
Coming up, religious sisters in the U.S. react to calls for renewal in a just-released Vatican report. And introducing rat rods, a new trend in hot rods more focused on fun than show. It's so important to listen. Husbands and wives need to communicate to bring happiness and serenity to family life. That's a tweet from Pope Francis on this 16th day of December. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick. We want to go back to that Vatican report on women religious in the U.S. for reaction. That was released today. We have Sister Dede Byrne of the Little Workers of the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary, and also Dominican Sister Marie Bernadette Thompson from the Council of Major Superiors of Women Religious. So I know that both of you have had a chance to read this report. As religious sisters, do you feel that this report is productive?
I think it gives a good insight of the demographics of what's happening in religious life. It's good.
Sister Marie Bernadette, what do you think?
I think the report was productive in that it gave religious the chance to really reflect on their life and to look at areas for growth, look at areas where the Lord has blessed them, and to bring that to the future with hope. So, yes.
There was some feeling at times that that report or the investigation itself was a bit invasive to congregations. How do you feel about that?
Our community didn't feel that way, and our Mother General in Rome was very excited about it. She wanted us to be prepared and open and willing. They're Italian, so they're very inviting anyhow to anyone that comes through the doors. So.
I'm sure the Dominicans weren't too worried about it, were they?
Well, you know, I could speak for some of the communities of the Council of Major Superiors of Women Religious. They really welcomed it. The members that I spoke with about the visitation said it was a wonderful experience. They had a wonderful rapport with the visitors. They enjoyed opening their homes to them, to show them the charism, to dialogue with them, to explain what their life is about, and to really witness to the gift that God has given them in their community. And so, and I think my community would be the same, although I let Mother speak for herself. But yes, I think it was a very positive experience.
One of the things that was pointed out that is really no surprise is the decline in vocations from the 60s when we were at 125,000 or so sisters to 50,000 now. Why this overall decline?
Well, you know, I could speak to the trend that Mother Agnes really mentioned in her section of the press conference this morning, which is a slightly different trend, which is among our membership. And that trend is really to growth. It's not really to decline at all. And so there's a very quiet, different trend going on. Many vocations, vibrant community life, vibrant prayer life, vibrant apostolates, and growth of communities. And so while some communities are diminishing in the United States, I think there's also reason for hope in the fact that many communities are experiencing this other trend and blessing and really welcoming the year ahead.
I'm glad you pointed that out because there are some congregations that are finding a great deal of interest. How is your congregation doing, Sister?
We're steady worldwide. We're small here in the States, but small but mighty, some people say. But we're an international community, so we're doing very well in Argentina, Italy, Albania, India.
And what is the charism of the little workers of the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary?
Our community is based on humility. We put everyone between the hearts of Jesus and Mary, no matter what we do. So most of our sisters are teachers. I do medical work, but we have...
You're a surgeon.
Yes.
You do medical work. And a veteran of the armed forces, aren't you?
Yes. Yes.
I would imagine that most people have no idea that sisters have that kind of background. In the Dominicans, what would you say is your unique charism as a Dominican sister?
The Dominican Sisters of St. Cecilia, of course, are Dominican in the family of Dominicans. We're teachers. We work with youth, primarily to help them in the faith, to promote the new evangelization, and really that motto, to contemplate and to give to others the fruits of one's contemplation, I think is very true for our community. Today, I think more so, we've spread our wings a bit to other countries, and now as well, we're in Scotland and the Netherlands, Canada, Italy, and Australia to promote the new evangelization as we have here. So
I'm blessed to have sister friends, and I consider the two of you friends. There's joy. I always see joy. Is that just me, or is that the truth?
Well, I think, you know, Pope Francis has said, where there are religious, there is joy.
That's right.
And it must be that way. It should be that way, because we've been chosen by God to be His alone. And the love that He's given us is what overflows, and joy is the expression of that. And that's what fuels our apostolates. That relationship with Him is what is the springboard for everything else that we do. So yes, joy is necessary.
Sister said it great. Just our day is just filled with, from the moment we get up to the moment we put our head on the pillow, to be serving the poor, serving Christ and the poor. And so when you're giving, it's always a source of joy.
Well, thanks to both of you for saying yes to our Lord and for giving us some insight into this report today. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks. God bless you. Well, a national security leak case could bring a journalist to the witness stand. Federal prosecutors may call New York Times reporter James Risen in their case against former CIA agent Jeffrey Sterling. Prosecutors say they're looking only for information. They will not require Risen to reveal his sources. Sterling is accused of disclosing government secrets. There's new information to report tonight about the recent VA medical care scandal. The department's Inspector General's office reports the VA misled Congress, the media, and the public. One glaring discrepancy came on a fact sheet released by the VA in April. It claimed 23 veterans died and 76 suffered serious harm while waiting months or even years for health care since 1999. Those numbers actually only date back to 2007. That's a difference of 8 years. Well, it's a new twist on the hot rod. Rat rods have a little less show and a little more go. Catherine Elliott reports.
Peter Duvaluis's rat rod stands out on the highway. It's louder, it's rustier, and it turns more heads.
I'm not particularly interested in how fast the truck will go. I'm interested in how cool it looks getting there.
Rat rods are like hot rods, but rustier. One rat rodder calls them blue-collar hot rods. Duvaluis makes his vintage recreations in a garage north of New York City, what he calls the rat's nest. The trucks are fast, but more fun than furious.
People go by, you wave, and they're smiling, and everybody wants a picture, and it makes people feel good.
This rat rod is built in part from a '46 Chevy pickup, but the streamlined shape is from Duvaluis's imagination.
I get such a kick out of driving this thing. If the wheels turn and you can modify it, that's for me. I'm there.
Giving new meaning to the term rat race. Catherine Elliott, EWTN News Nightly.
Up next, people all over the world are getting in the Christmas spirit, even around the Kremlin in Moscow. And this Washington home is filled with an elaborate display telling the tale of the birth of the Christ child. Happy Hanukkah to our Jewish brothers and sisters. The 8-day Festival of Light begins at sundown tonight. Hanukkah commemorates the Jewish uprising in the 2nd century BC against the Greek-Syrian kingdom. As the sun set in our nation's capital, this was a celebration of Hanukkah. Outside the White House, music, prayer. And of course, as our Jewish brothers and sisters celebrate Hanukkah, we are in the 3rd week of Advent. And it is easy to lose the true meaning of Christmas in this holiday hustle. Tonight, Wyatt Goolsbee shows us a big reminder built in the living room of a Washington home.
When you think of Christmas, you probably think of the toys, the stockings, the tree filled with ornaments, and even Charlie Brown. But inside this festive home in Washington, you'll find another sign of the season, a fully detailed nativity scene.
We had to know how to nail, how to screw, how to do a lot of things, drilling.
Pietro Barbi has spent years collecting statues and other pieces for his family's presepio, Italian for nativity scene. In his native Italy, nativity scenes aren't limited to Mary, Joseph, and a manger, but showcase details of shepherds, animals, angels, and even small towns. Presepios date back to the 13th century, usually credited to St. Francis of Assisi. Barbi says it takes several weeks to put his together, incorporating 2 waterfalls, hidden lights, and lots of woodwork.
Some of them can be very, very big, especially in the churches. They can occupy an entire room.
So this is almost relatively modest. I mean,
this is modest compared to what you can see in Italy.
And just like in Italy, the nativity scene is not limited to the birth of Christ, but also includes other biblical stories like the Annunciation, the flight into Egypt, and Joseph's dream.
It's important for people to understand that it's a simple way of explaining a story, and it's a beautiful way of explaining a story without having to read something.
Guiomar Ochoa, Barbi's daughter, promotes international activities at the National Endowment for the Arts. She hopes the Presepio will remind viewers of the Christmas story.
It is about the birth of Christ. And regardless of what religion you are, it's important to respect why we celebrate Christmas.
And on Christmas Day itself, families with a Presepio will remove a covering, revealing the reason for the season, the baby Jesus. In Washington, Wyatt Goolsbee, EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you, Wyatt. A beautiful way to display a beautiful story. And finally tonight, even Moscow is beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Plazas around the Kremlin are being decked out with giant Christmas ornaments, lighting up the night. Figure skaters perform the Nutcracker several times a day on an ice rink, and these crystal clear ice sculptures are likely to last a long time in the chill of Moscow's winter. Well, until tomorrow, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, watch again on EWTN's YouTube page. For all of us at EWTN's News Nightly. I'm Brian Patrick. Thanks for watching tonight. Good night, and may God bless you.